what's going on, AP World? We have a very important video for you today on the Compromise of 1850, a very important compromise in the history of America, one that appears quite often. So let's start out by looking at a very famous picture. This is from the Compromise of 1850, and you'll notice front and center here is Henry Clay. He is speaking in the Senate chamber, introducing some of the concepts of the Compromise of 1850. And over here is the President of the Senate. And according to the Constitution, who is the President of the Senate? If you said the Vice President, you are correct. And there is Vice President Millard Fillmore, who will shortly become President when Zachary Taylor dies. And he will support Henry Clay's Compromise of 1850. Okay, let's get going. We need to know some key players of the Compromise of 1850. And the first one is Stephen Douglas, nicknamed the Little Giant. He is a senator from Illinois, and he helped gain support for the compromise. He and Henry Clay work hand in hand and really play an instrumental role in getting this compromise to pass. And you will know him from a few years after this from those famous Lincoln-Douglas debates of 1858. Next, we have John C. Calhoun, still scary looking, very old here. He actually dies in 1850. He is a senator from South Carolina, and he wanted slavery to be left completely alone. He did not want it to be touched or prohibited in any area, so he has a different view. Daniel Webster, we remember him, member 2 of 3 of the Great Triumvirate. He is from New England. He gives a very famous speech, the 7th of March speech. I would be very familiar with that. It's this idea that he asked Northerners to support the fugitive slave law, which we'll talk about, and to compromise. So he really helped many in the North support the Compromise of 1850, and in the process, many abolitionists turned against him. They felt like he sold out. And finally, we cannot forget Super Clay, Henry Clay here. He introduced the compromise at age 72. What a champ that guy is. Imagine 72, you're introducing this compromise and saving the Union yet again. Pretty impressive if you ask me. All right, some background info leading to the Compromise of 1850. It all starts with the Mexican-American War, which lasted 2 years from 1846 to 1848. If you want more info, check out my review video on the Mexican-American War. Famous American Ralph Waldo Emerson said of Mexico at that time that Mexico will poison us. Boy, was this guy correct. We have the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo, which ended the Mexican-American War, and the U.S. is going to gain all this land from the Mexican cession here in 1848. Not this little piece down here, that's the Gadsden Purchase that will come years later. But the U.S. gains all this land here. Then we have the Wilmot Proviso, introduced by Democrat David Wilmot, and what this proviso proposed was that if it was passed, slavery would be prohibited from all land gained during the Mexican-American War. This passes the House, where the North has the population advantage, but it does not pass the Senate because the states were equal between free and slave states. So the Senate never approves this. Another issue is that Texas claimed land east of the Rio Grande in present-day New Mexico. So let's look here. You see what we know as present-day Texas with these two straight lines here. However, this area in gray here, east of the Rio Grande, Texas was claiming this all the way up here. They said, this is our land. And that caused a huge, huge conflict, as we will see. So lots of stuff that needs to be settled. And they did threaten war. They said to the United States, to Zachary Taylor, this is our land. If you come try to take it, we will go to war with you. So the country was really on the verge of war during 1850. And the South additionally said, if Texas is attacked, we will come to Texas's defense. So really, the country was kind of staring at civil war here in 1850. Okay, 5 parts of compromise. I can't stress enough, know all 5 of these parts. If you're writing an essay, you'll want to incorporate them. I've seen many multiple choice questions on which of the following was or was not a part of the Compromise of 1850. So be familiar with them. First one, California. Again, gained from that Mexican cession, California was added as a free state with the California Republic. This tips the balance in favor of free states. So now free states have an advantage. They outnumber the slave states by 1, so they will gain an advantage in the Senate. The second part, the slave trade would be abolished in Washington, D.C. Not slavery. Slavery remained. However, the slave trade was abolished because many Northerners said it was repulsive for foreign dignitaries to come to Washington, D.C. and see human beings being sold into slavery. So they abolished the trade, but not slavery. A very important concept that will be throughout the 1850s is this idea of popular sovereignty. And this was to be used in land gained from the Mexican cession, so your Utah and New Mexican territories. See New Mexico in purple and Utah here. These two, popular sovereignty, will be used here. Now, what does that mean? That is that those living in the territories could decide the status of slavery. That is your citizens, the people living here. So if people in New Mexico wanted slavery, they would vote on it. The people in Virginia or Pennsylvania, they would have no say if there's slavery in New Mexico. According to popular sovereignty, it's the people that live there. And this will be, again, as I mentioned, a common theme in the 1850s. A very important aspect of the Compromise of 1850 is a more strict Fugitive Slave Act, and this will infuriate Northerners. This is the one that the South really fought for and got, and this turns many Northerners into abolitionists. They are very upset. And they're upset because it requires Northerners to aid in catching and the return of slaves. So they had to take an active role. No longer could they just kind of sit back and watch slaves run away. This required their involvement. And many states began to pass what are called personal liberty laws, which we'll talk about in just a few minutes. And finally, the fifth part of this, Texas has paid $10 million. They were in a lot of debt from when they were their own independent country, and they were paid $10 million to settle the border dispute. So this land over here, they give up in exchange for $10 million. Okay, let's talk about the impact of the compromise. There are huge tensions in Congress that are demonstrated during this time period, and again, a sign of things to come. We have two key players here. This guy here is Thomas Hart Benton. He is a senator from Missouri. He's actually senator for over 30 years. And over here, we have another senator from the South, last name Foote, F-O-O-T-E. They get so heated in the Senate that Foote actually pulls a gun on Thomas Hart Benton and charges at him. And Thomas Hart Benton screams out, "Let the assassin fire." So in the Senate, you have senators pulling guns on each other. That's how tense these debates got. And you'll see this again with the caning of Charles Sumner in the 1850s, that the northern and southern tensions were so high that even congressmen were fighting or threatening to kill each other. Civil war is absolutely positively averted, and many historians will point to that this was a good thing. The reason why the Compromise of 1850 was good was because it gave the North 10 more years to industrialize, and the fact that in 1850 many Northerners, if secession happened, would not have supported civil war. They kind of would have let the South just go away and break into its own independent country. Because of those personal liberty laws, which required the North to become more involved in the catching of slaves, many in the North moved towards the abolitionist movement. So many people who were not abolitionists become abolitionists as a result. Personal liberty laws are not enforced in the North whatsoever. You actually have some states pass laws that go directly against them. And that is essentially nullification from the Northern view here. So again, this compromise requires many Northerners to move towards the abolitionist movement. Okay, we'll finish up with some past essay topics, and these are the same that I left you with in the video on the Compromise of 1820. And the reason why is because a lot of these dates begin with the 1820 Compromise and end at or around the Compromise of 1850. So analyze the effectiveness of political compromise in reducing sectional tensions in the period 1820 to 1861 from the 2004 free response. If you are familiar with the Compromise of 1820 and the Compromise of 1850, you have quite a bit of an essay there. From the 2005 Form B DBQ, in the early 19th century, Americans sought to resolve their political disputes through compromise, yet by 1860 this no longer seemed possible. Analyze the reasons for this change. Use the documents in your knowledge from the period 1820 to 1860 in constructing your response. There's one major compromise I haven't done yet, and that's the Kansas-Nebraska Act, but look for that. You do these three compromises, 1820, 1850, and Kansas-Nebraska, you'll be absolutely able to answer all three of these. And finally, analyze how westward expansion contributed to growing sectional tensions between the North and South. Confine your answer to the period from 1800 to 1850. So again, in 1803, you had the Louisiana Purchase, and from 1846 to 1848, you had the Mexican-American War, and then you can explain how those two things caused tension between the North and the South. All right, that's everything you need to know about the Compromise of 1850. I hope that helped. Please take a moment, subscribe to my channel, throw a link to this on the internet for me, please. If you have any questions, comments, ideas for videos, feel free to leave them in the comments below. And thank you very much for watching. Have a good day, guys.